Welcome to a world of drama, chaos, and some of the most thrilling manhwa I've ever experienced. Trust me, I've personally watched these stories unfold, and let me tell you, they're absolutely amazing. These manhwa are packed with everything you could possibly want: daring escapes, magical powers, heartwarming bonds, and yes, even a protagonist bold enough to demand child support from a demon duke. Yes, you heard that right. Child support from a demon duke. Each of these stories will make you laugh, cry, and gasp in disbelief. You'll find yourself completely hooked, wondering what on earth could possibly happen next. So, sit back, relax, and get ready for a journey through my personal favorites. Let's kick things off with Manhwa number 1, Being Raised by Villains. Thrown into a world of chaos and danger, the protagonist must survive among terrifying villains. But in the darkest places, unexpected bonds begin to form, proving that even in shadows, light can shine. Chamiso lived in a world of invisibility. Neglected by her family, she spent her days lost in the vibrant world of her favorite novel. Her heart longed for a life where she could be the cherished protagonist, loved, admired, and celebrated. But fate had a surprise waiting for her. One night, she woke up in the very world of her favorite story. At first, she was thrilled, but her excitement faded quickly when she realized something was terribly wrong. She wasn't the beloved main character. No! She was Eileen Edam, the downtrodden side character, destined to be kicked out of her noble family. But Chamiso wasn't going to let that happen. Determined to rewrite Eileen's tragic fate, she came up with a plan. She would leave the Edam mansion before they could throw her out. Late at night, she packed her meager belongings and tiptoed through the grand, empty halls. Just as her hand reached the door, a booming voice echoed behind her. "Eileen is my daughter!" "Her what?" She spun around to face Erno Edam, the wild and unpredictable heir to the family. With a sly grin, he declared to the entire household that Eileen was now his daughter. But why? It wasn't love. No, it was a calculated move. Erno needed a daughter to strengthen his position in the family. And Eileen? She was just convenient. Still, being tied to this crazy heir seemed better than being tossed out. Life as Erno's daughter was nothing like she expected. Sword training? A disaster! Tea parties? Explosions, every single time. Family meetings? Chaos like you wouldn't believe. But amidst the madness, something surprising happened. Eileen began to see another side of Erno, a fiercely protective side that no one else seemed to notice. Beneath his chaotic energy, he genuinely cared. For the first time in her life, Eileen felt like someone truly had her back. But life in House Edam wasn't all laughter. Shadows loomed over the family. Villains conspired in secret to destroy them, and Eileen found herself caught in the middle of their schemes. Forced to navigate treacherous politics and dangerous plots, she uncovered shocking truths about her own origins, truths that tied her fate to the Edam legacy. When the time came, Eileen didn't hesitate. In a final, breathtaking confrontation, she used her wits and her knowledge of the story to outsmart the villains. Against all odds, she saved House Edam. She proved to everyone and to herself that she wasn't just a side character. She was the hero of her own story. And in the end, Eileen found not only her strength, but a family who truly loved her, chaotic as they were. Manhwa number 2, Reborn as the protagonist's daughter. Imagine waking up as the child of a perfect power couple. It sounds like a dream, but for her, life is full of overprotective chaos and drama. Will she find her place in their grand story, or will she steal the spotlight altogether? In her first life, Emiliette was alone, forgotten, unloved. When she finally closed her eyes for the last time, her only wish was for a family that cherished her. But fate had other plans. She was reborn into a world of nobility as the daughter of Duke Cardin Velvardian, a man revered across the land. To the outside world, she had everything: wealth, a grand title, and a powerful father. But inside those castle walls, she was utterly alone. Her mother had passed away when she was young, and her father? The Duke was a cold, distant man who barely acknowledged her existence. One day, as she sat by the window of her grand but empty room, Emiliette made a promise to herself. This time, I will have a family that loves me. When the Duke returned to the castle after years away, Emiliette saw her chance. She didn't just wait for him to come to Harrow, no. With all the determination her tiny heart could muster, she set out to win him over. And she had a plan. Step 1. Cuteness overload. Every morning, Emiliette greeted the Duke with her biggest smile and the sweetest, "Good morning, Papa," but the Duke barely reacted. Fine, she thought. Step 2. Adorable persistence. She followed him around the castle like a little shadow, asking endless questions. "Papa, do you like cookies?" "Papa, why is your hair so shiny?" "Papa, will you play with me?" Each question chipped away at the icy wall around his heart. One day, as she stumbled while chasing after him, he caught her before she fell. For a moment, she saw something in his eyes, something soft. It was fleeting, but it was there. With time, Emiliette's relentless efforts began to pay off. The Duke, known across the land as a fierce and unfeeling man, started to change. He began spending more time with her, even teaching her to read maps in his study. And on rare occasions, when no one else was looking, she caught him smiling. For the first time in her life, first or second, Emiliette felt the warmth of a father's love. But the more she grew closer to him, the more she realized. Her parents weren't ordinary nobles. Her mother, though gone, was a woman of incredible strength and grace. Her father, the Duke, bore the weight of a legacy far greater than she'd ever imagined. And as for Emiliette herself, she wasn't just the protagonist's daughter. One fateful day, during a grand ball, the castle was attacked by enemies seeking to overthrow the Duke. As chaos erupted, Emiliette found herself face to face with danger. But instead of cowering, she remembered the courage her mother had shown in her time. She remembered the strength her father had always carried, and for the first time, she stood tall. In the aftermath of the attack, the Duke held her closer than he ever had before. "You are stronger than I ever realized," he whispered. And at that moment, Emiliette knew. She wasn't just a side character in someone else's story. She was the hero of her own. From that day on, the Duke was no longer distant. Together, they began to rebuild not just their castle, but their bond. Emiliette had finally found what she had always longed for. A family that loved her. Manhwa number 3. Being loved for the first time. After sacrificing herself 99 times, she finally gets the chance to live a life filled with love and care. But can her heart, broken by centuries of pain, learn to trust her new family? Or will her fears keep her from embracing the love she deserves? In her previous lifetimes, Anastasia Enderblanc was a savior. 99 times, she sacrificed herself to save the world. Over and over again, she gave everything, her power, her body, and her soul for a world that didn't remember her. Her reward? Lifetime after lifetime of loneliness, fear, and rejection. Every family, every person she loved betrayed her. So when her 100th life began, she didn't feel hope or joy. She felt resigned. This time, she was born as the youngest child of House Enderblanc, one of the most powerful noble families in the land, a family famous for their strictness and their fear of magic. And Anastasia? Her magic was unparalleled. Here we go again, she thought. From the moment she opened her eyes, she braced herself for the worst. She waited for the fear, the rejection, the accusations of being a monster. But it didn't come. Instead, her mother gently held her, smiling with tears in her eyes. Her father lifted her high in the air, beaming with pride. Her siblings doted on her, bringing her toys and sweets. For the first time, Anastasia didn't know what to feel. Could this be real? She waited for their smiles to fade, for their love to turn into fear, for the warmth to turn into coldness. She waited, but it didn't happen. At every turn, they showered her with kindness. When she struggled with her magic, her brother stayed by her side for hours, encouraging her. When she felt unworthy, her sister reminded her of her worth. And when she had nightmares about her past lives, her father stayed up all night, holding her hand until she fell asleep. But deep inside, Anastasia couldn't let go of her doubts. This is too good to be true, she thought. Her heart had been shattered too many times. She couldn't believe that this family, this loving, kind family, was different. One day, during a grand family gathering, Anastasia overheard whispers. Some nobles called her a monster. Others said she would bring ruin to House Enderblank. Her chest tightened. This is it, she thought. This is when they turn on me. But instead of fear or anger, her family defended her fiercely. Her father's voice thundered through the room. Anastasia is not a monster. She is my daughter, and if anyone dares insult her again, they will answer to me. Her siblings stood by his side, their eyes blazing with determination. For the first time in her 100 lifetimes, Anastasia felt something she hadn't experienced before. She felt safe. As the days turned into weeks, she began to trust them little by little. She started to laugh more, to open up about her fears and her past, and when her family listened without judgment, her walls began to crumble. Anastasia slowly realized that this life was different. She wasn't just a savior. She wasn't just a tool to save the world. She was a daughter, a sister, a girl who deserved to be loved. In a climactic moment, when an ancient enemy threatened her family, Anastasia used her immense power to protect them. She feared they would see her as a monster. But instead, they embraced her even more. Her father smiled, tears in his eyes, and said, "You're not a monster, Anastasia. You're a miracle." In her 100th life, Anastasia finally found what she had always longed for. A family who loved her not for her power, not for her sacrifice, but simply for who she was. Manhwa number 4. The Demon's Darling Daughter. A young girl discovers her father is a powerful demon duke. Determined to demand independence, she steps into his mysterious world. But instead of rejection, she finds herself caught in a whirlwind of chaos, magic, and unexpected affection. Mia Evelyn's life was nothing but darkness. Locked away in a tiny, windowless room by her cruel aunt and uncle, she spent her days dreaming of a world she'd never seen. To them, Mia was nothing more than a nuisancea child they barely tolerated. But one fateful night, everything changed. Mia began to have strange visions of a future she didn't recognize. In these dreams, she saw herself standing in a grand, otherworldly castle. At its center was a tall, imposing man with fiery eyes and a regal presence. Her heart raced as she realized what the dreams were telling her. That man was her father, a demon duke. With this revelation, Mia made a daring decision. If he's my father, then he owes me child support, she thought, clutching the small bag of supplies she had secretly packed. For the first time in her life, Mia found the courage to escape. She climbed out of the tiny room she had known her entire life and ran into the night, following the visions that had guided her. After a long and perilous journey, Mia arrived at the gates of a grand, foreboding castle. The guards stared at her in disbelief. A human child? At the gates of the demon Duke Velkin's domain? But Mia, small and determined, raised her chin and demanded to see him. When Velkin appeared, his presence was overwhelming. His crimson eyes glowed with power, and his aura radiated authority. But as he looked at Mia, something softened in his expression. Mia stood her ground, clutching the hem of her tattered dress. "You are my father," she said, her voice trembling but firm, "and you owe me child support." For a moment, there was silence. Then, to her surprise, Velkin laughed. "You are bold for someone so small," he said, his sharp teeth glinting in the light. "But you are not wrong. If you are my daughter, then you belong here." To Mia's shock, Velkin didn't just give her the money she asked for, he brought her into his castle, declaring her his heir. But life in the demon world wasn't as simple as Mia had hoped. Velkin's castle was filled with powerful demons, each more intimidating than the last. And though Velkin treated her with care, his methods were unconventional. Sword lessons at dawn? Lavish banquets where the food sometimes growled back? And the family pet? A massive dragon who insisted on curling up by her bed. Mia quickly realized that life with her demon father was far from normal. At first, Mia struggled to adjust. She was used to being ignored and mistreated, and now everyone was watching her, waiting to see if she was worthy of her father's name. But as time passed, something remarkable happened. Mia began to grow stronger. Velkin's rigorous training helped her discover abilities she never knew she had, and for the first time in her life, she felt cared for. Still, doubts lingered in her heart. Could she truly belong in this world? Was Velkin's affection genuine, or would he abandon her like everyone else had? One day, when an enemy of the Duke attacked the castle, those doubts came rushing back. As chaos erupted around her, Mia prepared to run. But before she could, Velkin appeared, shielding her with his immense power. His voice was firm and unyielding as he said, "No one will ever harm you while I am here." In that moment, Mia realized something she had never dared to believe. She wasn't alone anymore. Her father wasn't perfect, but he was willing to protect her with everything he had, and for the first time, she felt the stirrings of a bond she had always longed for: a family. As the castle returned to peace, Mia stood at a crossroads. Would she leave and pursue the independence she had always dreamed of? Or would she stay and build a life with her demon family? Looking up at Velkin's expectant gaze, Mia smiled. "I think I'll stick around a little longer." In the end, Mia didn't just find freedom. She found a family that accepted her for who she was: a bold, clever girl who had the courage to dream of a better life. And this time, she knew she wasn't going to face the world alone. Manhwa number 5. The Monstrous Duke's adopted daughter. After being betrayed by her own family, she awakens a power she never knew she had. With nowhere else to turn, she makes a bold deal with the infamous Monstrous Duke. What starts as a pact for survival transforms into something much deeper: a family built on trust, strength, and love. The Sparado family was known for its elegance and power, but behind their polished facade hid a dark secret: shadow magic. For over a century, no one in the family had wielded it, and their prestige had begun to wane. Leslie Sparado was the youngest daughter of the family, but unlike her sister Ellie, she wasn't cherished or praised. She was used. Her father, Marquis Sparado, saw her as nothing more than a tool to restore the family's lost glory. One fateful night, Marquis Sparado made a horrifying decision. To awaken shadow magic in Ellie, he would sacrifice Leslie. The ceremony began. The flames burned high. Leslie stood in the center, trembling as her family looked on coldly. But as the ritual unfolded, something unimaginable happened. Instead of Ellie, Leslie herself awakened the power of darkness. The shadows swirled around her, consuming the flames meant to destroy her. The Sparado family looked on in shock as the very magic they sought to control chose Leslie instead. For the first time, she felt a spark of power within her, but she also knew one thing. She had to escape. Leslie fled the family that had tormented her for years. With her newfound strength, she made her way to the one person who could protect her: the monstrous Duke Salvatore. The Duke, a man feared by all, lived in a grand castle shrouded in mystery. Rumors claimed he was a beast, a creature of nightmares. But Leslie wasn't afraid. When she arrived at his gates, she made a bold proposal. "Adopt me, and I'll use my powers to serve you." The Duke, intrigued by the courage of this small girl, agreed. Life with the Duke was nothing like Leslie expected. His castle was vast and filled with strange beings, but instead of fear, she found kindness. His staff treated her with respect. The Duke, despite his gruff exterior, ensured she was safe. And for the first time, Leslie had a place she could call home. But the Sparado family wasn't about to let her go so easily. They wanted her shadow magic, and they were willing to do anything to bring her back. Leslie's new life was threatened at every turn, from political schemes to magical attacks orchestrated by her own family. Still, Leslie refused to back down. With the Duke's support, she began to hone her powers. The shadows that once frightened her became her allies, bending to her will. And as she grew stronger, so did her resolve. I won't let them control me anymore, she vowed. In a dramatic confrontation, Leslie faced her family once more. They demanded her return, promising riches and power. But Leslie stood tall, her shadow magic swirling around her like a shield. You threw me away, she said, her voice steady. You don't own me anymore. When her father attempted to force her back, the Duke himself stepped forward, his towering presence silencing the room. Leslie is under my protection now, he declared. Touch her, and you'll answer to me. In that moment, Leslie knew she was free. The Sparado family's grip on her was broken, and as she looked at the Duke, she realized she had finally found a place where she belonged. She wasn't just a forgotten daughter. She was Leslie Salvatore, the adopted daughter of the monstrous Duke. And she wasn't afraid anymore.